So today we're going to look at some patterns. We're going to review some coordinate grids. We're even going to look at some patterns within coordinate grids. So let's dive right in. So here we have a question asking which number patterns match the rules. I have a rule for Chase's pattern and I have a rule for Peyton's pattern. But before I look at all of these answer choices, let's take a second and pause. Are you ready for my biggest tip involving these patterns? Stay organized. If we can stay organized, it's going to be so much easier to take a look at all of those answer choices and keep up with each person's rule within that pattern. Let me show you how to do that. To stay organized, I like to create a T-chart. Since this question doesn't actually give me the numbers in the pattern, I like to take the rules and put them in the T-chart myself. So let's start with Chase's rule. Start at 6, add 6. So let's make our first number in his pattern 6. Since I'm adding 6, 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 6 is 18, plus 6 is 24. Now let's look at Peyton's rule. Start at 2 times 2. So I'm going to multiply for Peyton's rule. Start at 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. So now I have an actual example of both boys' patterns. So now let's take a look back at the original question. Which number patterns match the rules? Now that we have the work right here of each boy's rule, it'll be a lot easier to look at these answer choices. So looking at my work, I can see that the correct answer is B. If I look at B, I can see for Chase's pattern, I have 6, 12, 18, which is right here. And for Peyton's pattern, I have 2, 4, 8, which is right here. Our next question says, which statement about the corresponding terms in both patterns is always true? Before we look at all of our answer choices, let's take a second and analyze Hayden's pattern and analyze Maya's pattern. In looking at Hayden's pattern, I can see that it increases by 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So Hayden's rule is add 2. Maya's pattern increases by 6, 12, 18, 24, so on. So Maya's rule is add 6. When I look at the corresponding terms from Hayden's pattern to Maya's pattern, overall I can see that the numbers within Maya's pattern are larger. So let's remember that when we go back to our answer choices. Each answer choice begins with either talking about Hayden's pattern being 3 more or 3 times Maya's, or it talks about Maya's pattern being 3 more or 3 times Hayden's. So we already looked at our patterns and we determined that Maya's pattern is the one with the larger numbers. So that can kind of help me eliminate A and B. I'm going to look at C and D because I know that since Maya's pattern is larger, it's going to be 3 more or 3 times the corresponding term in Hayden's pattern. So let's see which one of those it is. Let's start at the first numbers in both of these patterns, 2 and 6. Well, I know that 2 plus 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. That doesn't quite work, so let's try the 3 times. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times 3 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. So that kind of fits with the answer choice of D. Each term in Maya's pattern is 3 times the corresponding term in Hayden's pattern. So my answer is D. Here we have an input-output table. These can also be used to represent patterns. So let's take a look at each individual component of this and see what patterns we can find within this table. If I look just in my input column, I can see going down, my pattern is increasing. 4, 6, 8. So I can see for my input side, it is increasing by 2. So I'm going to write plus 2. In my output side, I can also see it is still increasing. 8, 12, 16. I can see here it is increasing by 4. So I'm going to write plus 4. Now this isn't the only part of the table I'm going to look at for patterns. I'm also going to look at from the input to the output, from 4 to 8, 6 to 12, 8 to 16. Any ideas? I can see that from the input to the output, it is increasing by times 2. Because 4 times 2 is 8, 6 times 2 is 12, 8 times 2 is 16. Which ordered pair would follow the same rule as the table? This is the same table that we've already looked at, so now we just have to figure out which of these answer choices follows the same rules, the same pattern within this table. So, any ideas? Remember that from the input to the output, we decided that it was times 2. So if I look at my answer choices, I can see the one that follows that as well would be C. I know 8 plus 2 is 10, and if I follow the times 2 rule, 10 times 2 would be 20. So that works out. The answer to our last question was an ordered pair. Remember that an ordered pair can help us show a location on the coordinate grid. Within each ordered pair, it gives me a number of where to plot on the x-axis and the y-axis. So let's take a second and look at this on a coordinate grid. So here we have an example of a coordinate grid. Remember, the very beginning point of our coordinate grid is called the origin. It's where our numbers begin. When I venture off and go across, this is my x-axis. And then as I go up, we have our y-axis. Our coordinates were 10, 20. Since 10 was first, that's going to represent our x-axis. I'm going to go over 10. 20 is my second number. That's the y-axis, so I'm going to go up to 20. And that is where I'm going to put my plot. As you can see, this dot represents the points of 10 and up 20. So that matches my 10, 20. Here we have a question that has a table and coordinate planes. Jaden created a table to track the number of hours he spent playing outside. Based on the pattern in the table, which coordinate plane shows the ordered pair for day 4 and 5? I can see that this column represents my x and this column represents my y. It's very important to pay close attention to the directions. The directions talk about day 4 and day 5. However, my days stop at day 3. But since this is representing a pattern, I have to make sure I can continue the pattern. So let's take a look at just the table so we can figure out the points for day 4 and day 5. Since I need to know day 4 and 5, I'm going to go ahead and add day 4, day 5. Now I have to figure out the pattern with my y coordinates. You can see that my numbers are decreasing. 7, 6, 5. So each time it's decreasing by just 1, so it's safe to say that my pattern is going to keep decreasing by 1. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So now that means on my coordinate grids, I'm going to look for the ordered pairs 4, 4, and 5, 3. Right here are the ordered pairs that we just discovered from looking at our table. So these are the numbers that I'm going to look at because I continued on 4 and 5, and now I just have to find these within my answer choices. So let's take a second, look at each answer choice. Pause if you need to. And based off of these ordered pairs, I can see that the correct answer is D. 4-4 is over 4, up 4, and 5-3 is over 5, up 3.